I thank the gentleman from California and now yield to the gentlelady from Vermont and our new ranking member. We're being taken over by Democrat ranking members.
Yes, it's an interesting morning, isn't it, Mr. Chair?
Ms. Becca Balint.
Thank you so much. Dr. Swagel, thank you so much for coming to the Budget Committee this morning. You know, on multiple occasions, you've had the opportunity to discuss with us in-depth research done by your team at CBO, and I truly appreciate your commitment to evidence-based policymaking. As a former state legislator, I know how important that is. As you may know, Vermont has faced back-to-back summers of devastating flooding. We were hit really hard last July, and we're still in the process of recovering when another devastating storm rolled in almost to the day from the storms last year. And FEMA declared both of these events major disasters. And sadly, there are thousands of Vermonters who are still waiting on assistance from FEMA for damage to their homes, their properties, their businesses from last year's flooding, and some who have been flooded now 2 years in a row. Climate change is clearly putting a strain on FEMA's resources, and FEMA has recently implemented what's called the immediate needs funding, which means FEMA is so low on funds that it has to pause paying for certain past disaster recovery projects so that it can focus on life-saving and life-sustaining activities, which of course we support. We want to make sure we're saving lives in real time. But what happens then is the folks who are struggling day to day to put their lives back in order don't get the immediate funding that they need to do that. And towns in Vermont, really small towns, Vermont is a very rural state. You've got these tiny towns in Vermont who are really crushed by the costs of recovering from these flooding episodes. So, you know, I'm frustrated because we have a situation where Republicans in Congress have brought to the floor what I see as another unserious government funding proposal. It doesn't meet FEMA's funding needs. I really urge them to come back to the table so we can reach a bipartisan agreement and a responsible agreement to fund the government, because climate change is coming for all of us, for every congressional district. And rural is rural, whether you're rural Vermont or rural Kentucky or rural Ohio. These tiny towns are not going to be able to withstand the financial burden of building back. So I'd like to take this time to highlight the importance of fully funding flood resilience. Dr. Swagel, according to the Congressional Budget Office, is it actually cheaper to pay for flood mitigation projects than to do nothing? Like, am I reading that right based on your report?
That's right. We put out a recent report showing the increasing prevalence of the kinds of natural disasters you highlighted, and then provided, you know, a range of policy options, you know, such as to put the money in up front and mitigate versus, you know, paying people after.
And so I understand the challenges of needing to pay that money up front, but it's so clear that we are paying much more down the road when we don't invest in these mitigation projects. Can you highlight for us what the impacts, you know, from your office's perspective, what will be the impacts of climate change on the federal budget over time, especially if we don't make these investments up front?
Okay, no, thank you. And I'm going to focus on housing and the natural disasters you mentioned. We're doing a range of work on this, including relationships between climate and health, for example.
Yeah.
I'll focus on the natural disasters. We had a report recently. It was at the direction of Representative Waters in the Financial Services Committee, connecting climate, flooding, and housing. And increasing flooding, increasing hurricanes, tornadoes is affecting the housing market. There's a federal cost because the federal government's on the hook for so much of the mortgage industry. We support the mortgage industry. Is also affecting discretionary spending. You mentioned FEMA, that's discretionary spending. Yeah. And then it's affecting homeowners because the private insurers are pulling back. They're raising rates, they're reducing coverage availability. That affects current homeowners. It affects future homeowners. You can't get insurance, you can't buy a house. And so that's what we looked at is, you know, connecting these things together.
And I see that I'm short on time. I'll just close by saying that it's absolutely essential work that we do, that we have to do in a bipartisan manner, to pass appropriations packages that include funding for the Disaster Relief Fund. Because as I said, this is not particular to any state. This is coming for all of us. So thank you so much, Dr. Swagel, for being here. I really appreciate what you always bring to the committee.
I think